While in Poland, I met with Adam Starzinski. He's a young Polish-Swedish citizen who knows the political scenario inside out. He's seen the difference between unpatriotic Sweden and conservative Poland. Adam gave us interesting insights into Poland's politics, but I wanted to talk more about the cultural effect that Poland is having on the rest of Europe and the West. We talked about how young people are fighting the political establishment in unconventional ways and how Poland's national and popular culture hasn't been poisoned by the far left in the same way it has been in the West. So I do arts and culture. That's my thing. I was an artist in New York City and I got blacklisted and attacked by the left. So now I'm here talking about arts and culture, and I happen to be in Poland. So I found out a few things. I guess Chopin is from Warsaw here in Poland, which is super cool. And I guess that culture is still really booming. I saw a really little girl in Old Town playing a violin. I saw a lot of Chopin stuff there. What else? There's a lot of young, the traditional dancing of, I'm also Croatian heritage, I'm first generation American, and I grew up with something called the kolo, and we would do that whole like holding hands in the traditional garb, which is kind of similar. It was so nice to see those costumes and young kids doing all that. And I also saw on the streets, you guys have your own graffiti. I think New York started graffiti.
Sure, but we're trying to catch up. I'm personally not really a fan of graffiti, especially of just the scribbling on the walls.
Exactly. But it's a form of marking your territory.
Yes, and at least the murals are pretty nice.
Right.
When you paint some large buildings and with nice motifs, I have nothing against it.
Right, yeah, we have that in Brooklyn as well. There's I think it's funded graffiti, and they always have some sort of message, and it is quite beautiful. But a lot of times I see a lot of far left type graffiti and messages in Brooklyn, unfortunately. But in Poland, you guys have the opposite. You have some right-wing graffiti.
Well, there is this little war going on. I would say that there is a lot of left-wing graffiti too, because it's one of the few forms in which they can show their presence in the city, because they aren't, if we talk about the real far left, the militant left,
right.
the Antifa.
Yeah, exactly. The Antifa type.
In Sweden, where I grew up, they dominate the streets. Here in Poland, they have a hard time showing themselves on the streets. Them and the football hardcore supporters, they don't really like each other, and there's simply more of the football guys over here than Antifa, so they need to watch their back, and they prefer operating at night with graffiti, stickers, and operations such as that.
I mean, that's really interesting to me because in New York, it's predominantly left. It's Antifa is out there. They have bars that have Antifa flags waving. They're hanging inside of the bar. They're telling me, look out, we know where you live. I mean, I've gone to an event where Antifa was all in a mask taunting me, saying, Martina, I know where you live, Martina.
I know where you live, Martina.
And they have absolutely no shame, and it's just amazing that in Poland it's the opposite. They're the ones hiding at night.
Yeah, of course, I don't encourage any kind of actions directed anyway.
Exactly.
But it's nice to know at least that you aren't as much of a target as you are in Sweden.
Yeah.
It's, of course, I wish that these tensions wouldn't exist. It's all very unnecessary. I think that it has come down to in Poland. We had more of this probably in the late 90s and the early 2000s. In recent years, these militant ideological battles, they have fizzled out. Now instead you have large liberal protest movements. I don't know what the American equivalent would be, but I guess something of Time's Up or
the Women's March,
things like these. So absolutely non-violent events, still very emotional and very charged, but here in Poland we have something called the Committee to the Defense of Democracy, that they are out and demonstrating quite often, and sometimes they are met by counter demonstrations. But political violence is very rare,
Yeah.
and that's how it should be. So instead, people they sometimes they fight with graffiti, sometimes they fight with stickers, but as long as they stay away from any crazy ideas.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't even aware that what Antifa was until they targeted me, and I didn't realize such a dramatic polar opposites of political warfare that was going on until I became the target of it, and they ruined my career. So it's out there. I don't condone it. I don't condone our side acting with their principles. I don't think we need to do that. I think in America we are winning. You know, we won Trump, we won the House, the Senate, and now the Supreme Court. So I think with our memeing, which is our form of art, I think memes are art. And I think we're starting to gain ground. I mean, their artwork, the left's artwork, is all about shock and grotesque, degenerate stuff.
Sure.
And it's just not even interesting anymore. They're obsessed with Trump, doing anti-Trump artwork. The comedy is just really lame with all that political correctness. So I think they really are losing, and they are losing the culture war. So that's exciting, but I see Poland as a little bit more. You guys, we were still, like I said, afraid in New York, afraid of Antifa. They have more of a stronghold, but it's starting to shift. But you guys already have that ground here, which is exciting. And what I would like to see more is, I heard of this rapper that does a lot of patriotic rap and encourages the youth to exercise and do stuff. I would like to see a lot more of that.
This is actually something that is encapsulated in a saying that they have, sportowy tryb życia, which is a sporty lifestyle, basically.
Oh, cool.
So these rappers, they often promote trying out different sports, for example. It could be even something that people would consider silly sports, water polo, handball, volleyball, whatever. It doesn't have to be MMA or boxing or whatever, even if that is probably the favored sport by many of these people, or football, naturally. But in general, they want people to live healthy lives. They are telling young people to don't drink, which in Poland is quite a problem. We have a history of a lot of vodka consumption. So anything that makes young kids stop smoking, stop drinking, and absolutely staying away from drugs. So this saying, sportowy tryb życia, it encapsulates, make sure that you work out, that you try to improve in some sport, that you stay away from all the bad stuff, and often they also encourage to get involved in some activity, some cause, start studying, self-improvement. So
that's amazing.
It's a very positive message.
Yeah, I mean, I saw an article recently, and it said something about bragging about working out, or like, watch out, if you work out too much, you may accidentally become far right, which is so fun.
Well, it's like this Chad meme that is going around.
Exactly.
At the same time, at the opposite end, we have the fat positivity movement, or
So
a lot of other crazy ideas.
Yeah,
so
being physically fit is accidentally, I guess, a right-wing thing.
It feels like the left is embracing anything that is ugly.
Exactly.
They don't like the light. They don't like beauty. And for conservatives, you can even see it in things such as architecture, for example. The left, they embrace postmodernist architecture, a lot of strange glass buildings in very different, weird shapes. While if we look back, I was in Sicily a few weeks ago, in these old Baroque towns in southeastern Sicily, and when you see what people did 300 years ago, when there was a small church, it didn't have to be a cathedral. It was just enough that there was a church, or that there was a main square of a city. Everything is so beautiful. People put their soul into their craft. Today, it's all about counting economy. What is the cheapest? What is the most efficient way?
You showed me around around town in Warsaw here as well, and then there's parts that were built after the war, I don't know if this fits into postmodernism necessarily, but then there's like Old Town, and you could see the difference between the gray and the cement and then the old culture and those buildings. It just has such a different feeling to it.
Warsaw has a reputation of being a very mixed city. Krakow, our old capital city, was not razed to the ground during the war and is full with wonderful, wonderful buildings in the city center. Here in Warsaw, we have more brutalist architecture, social realism, so gray concrete slabs, 16 floors high. But apart from that, we have also reconstructed, because in this city, the Germans, they razed to the ground 90% of all buildings. And the things that were rebuilt in Old Town, they all look like they did 300-400 years ago. So there you can see the contrast between the old beauty and the communist
and you can see where the life is. The life is definitely in Old Town. There's festivals. That's where they're selling artwork and selling food out in the streets. You see children playing and laughing with balloons. It's super nice. And then the gray part is not quite like that. But what you said about the music and encouraging not to drink and do all that, it reminds me of when I was younger in the hardcore music scenes. I don't know if you're familiar with hardcore.
Not at all.
Screamo music. It's kind of in that punk realm, but it's hardcore Screamo music. And growing up, it was called, we were straight edge. So straight edge means you don't drink, you don't smoke, you don't do any drugs of that sort. And I think that was a really good thing to embrace. And it so happens that some of these Screamo bands were actually Christian bands. Yeah. So you see a lot of that. I mean, Poland is super Catholic and all that too. So it's kind of a really great thing when you see the faith and all these morals and things. It just makes you better humans. And I think it's a really great inspiration for the youth. That is so much better than idolizing someone that got famous for a sex tape.
Absolutely. When it comes to the left, it feels that apart from distancing themselves from beauty, they have also distanced themselves from the truth. This is why they embrace relativism. And this is also why anything goes. While on the conservative side, people try to improve themselves. They strive for new goals, new horizons. And this is the way forward. And this is also why, unfortunately, Western Europe and North America is losing ground. In East Asia, we see cultures that are very dynamic, growing. Of course, they have their own issues, their own problems. But if we compare our societies, they are clearly on the up, on the rise, why we have been stagnating for a long time. And I think we should put the blame on the left. It's a result of relativism and of absolutely not encourage anyone to be better than they currently are.
Right. There's something about sacrifice, and I know as a Catholic we talk about that as well. You know, sacrifice. Jesus sacrificed himself, and we sacrifice eating meat at certain times. I mean, sacrifice is so much about our faith, and there really is something to it, because if you just completely act on your impulses and every indulgence that you have, it's so selfish and it becomes such a sin, you know? So I think that's what I see with what you're saying of having to work on being a better person and improve yourself. It takes sacrifice, and there's something really, really strong about that, and something closer to God when you're able to sacrifice.
Absolutely. It's also that you work for goals that you reach not the same day, but in months, in years' time. With the hedonistic lifestyle, it's all about instant gratification. So this is why all the hard drugs, this is why all the drinking, this is why you take risks that you shouldn't take, unnecessary risks, putting yourself in hazardous situations. And nothing good comes out of it. You have to have respect for life, and this is something that any religion usually helps, but especially with Christianity, it is all about becoming a better person and being good to other people around you. And
it doesn't mean that you're a perfect person. I think a lot of people come to these conclusions later on in life because they realize that this lifestyle of excess is really unhealthy. And I'm not a perfect person, but you learn more and more as you get older that how important these sacrifices are and how to be a better person, and to share that with the youth and encourage that and make it cool for the youth to think like that. That just gives them a head start in life.
Absolutely. I think that Milo Yiannopoulos, for example, is one of the people that have explained pretty well that Catholics, they are sinners. They are far from perfect people, but they are aware that sinning is natural. It's human. You can't always be perfect, but you always have to try to improve. So there's absolutely this drive to be a better person and accept that you can't always be perfect. That is how life is, and that's how the human nature is. But you cannot give up and start lowering your expectations, lowering your demands on yourself. You have to always strive for self-improvement.
With your cool stickers here.
Please keep some.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, in New York, we try to do too. I have a group of friends that there's a ton of lefty stuff up. We have this sticker war as well going on in Brooklyn. We try. Ours get taken down right away. We've got some of like Soros and all sorts of things on Islam and realities, the truths on Islam, and they get taken down right away.
It's all about showing that you're the more creative side than the other.
Hey, we're here.
Exactly.
We are here.
Initially, you mentioned punk.
Yeah.
The punk scene, and it's also another thing that they say these days, that conservatism is the new alternative culture, the new punk rock or whatever. So I think that this is also, the left has grown weak because they have been complacent. They are used to being on top, and they aren't used to facing opposition. So their ideas, they aren't fresh anymore.
Exactly.
They were edgy, they were fun 30, 40 years ago.
Exactly.
But now it's time for us to show that we can beat them at this.
If you want to see more from me and the rest of the Rebel team, like and subscribe.